Hello, this is a book review. Interesting ideas, favorite quotes, takeaways from this book, Men's Search for Meaning. Let's see what we got. First one is, in psychology, there is a term defined a person's belief that he will not face prosecution till the last minute. I found it interesting. And there is a belief that things might go right eventually. I didn't write the term, but there is that term. Next one is, after prisoners getting used to see bodies, they start taking the belongings from bodies. So after a little while, they get used to it. So it's some type of adaptation. And after they get used to seeing bodies, they start to find how they can take advantage of what they are seeing. So we can see adaptation. In the camps, prisoners were so slim that their body was start eating itself. After the body, it doesn't have energy, so the body start eat things like muscles, fats, everything. I think even bones, but I'm not quite sure. It's interesting. Since food is so vital, that was the main subject for prisoners to talk about. This is what they mostly talk about. That was scarce. Food was scarce, and all what they could think about was food, and that was the main subject. Usually, sometimes I think about what people in different situations think about, and it's interesting to see what they were thinking about and what the subjects of conversation were about. For the guards, prisoners were just numbers, and they were treated that way. Doesn't matter if the number is alive or dead. They all see they were numbers, so they will dehumanize every human they were seeing by treating humans as numbers, and they deeply didn't care about if the number is alive or dead, which is like quite disturbing. And you can see how far humans can go. Prisoners who were able to look on the situation from a psychological perspective, for example, had better coping mechanism. I think this is what Frankl did. He tried to distance himself from the situation by trying to look on the situations, in especially difficult situations, from a psychological perspective. And he claims that helped him to cope. And that's some sort of a coping mechanism, to look on it from a psychological perspective and distance your emotions and feelings from what happens. After the liberation, prisoners had trouble believing and understanding that freedom has been given and it's real. They had trouble to actually understand it. They thought it's some kind of a dream. They could not believe that liberation has been given to them, and it's interesting to see how people have having problem to believe that things are good all over again. And I think it's pretty much the same with things are bad. I remember he's not speaking about it in the book. He's not talking about it in the book, but I remember that even when the war started, World War II, and people were reluctant to believe that they might get killed and they need to move out of there, especially Jews. It's interesting. Existential vacuum means the void in which people don't know what to do with their lives. Man is destined to doubt everything. So he has this term existential vacuum, and this is when people don't know what to do with their life. So we have an existential problem. They don't know what they're doing. And in general, men, not men, but humans are destined to doubt everything. They don't know. They're always in doubt. Do I do the right thing? Do I not do the right thing? And I definitely find that applicable to many, to our lives. Suffering is no longer suffering when a meaning has been found. And there is always this, when you have a reason and you have a goal or a reason to suffer for, suffering is no longer suffering. When there is a meaning for that suffering, basically, put it in that words, suffering is no longer as problematic. People that had reason or meaning could ascribe that suffering to it, and they survived much better, which I find interesting. Paradoxical intention mean to deliberately do something that we don't want to have, like trying to stay awake in order to fall asleep. Use of humor helps. So that's paradoxical intention. We try to do something that we don't want to have. So if we have trouble with sleep, what we'll do is try to stay awake, and surprisingly, it works pretty well. It has a name. It's a known thing, but that's the definition. Use of humor, it helps in those situations. So we can say, I don't have an exact example, but when we use humor in those situations, because you're talking to yourself in those situations, so you don't give yourself a hard time, and use of humor might help. And the last one is deferring to immediate gratification entails loss of meaning. When people are deferring and preferring immediate gratification, means that they don't have meaning and they just want to do whatever comes in mind. And he also said that that's where the prisoners were doing. And he said because they had cigarettes, I forget from where did they got those cigarettes, but what he did with those cigarettes, they exchanged those cigarettes for food, for example. And they said when the prisoners, when they saw someone smoking that cigarette, they knew he's gonna die soon. And that's some sort of deferring for immediate gratification. And that's it for notes. In general, this book is quite interesting and disturbing, actually. It has a very good details and description of what they were going through in those camps, and it was surprisingly good. Like it's not a movie, it's a book, but it was a surprisingly good description. And there is I think that's the first part, and a little psychological, from a little psychological perspective, and then the other part is more of like a future and how to deal with all type of stuff. Overall, I think I'm gonna give this book 4 stars. I think it deserves 4 stars. It has some it's like some problems here and there, so it's not a 5 stars, but definitely 4 star. It deserves that. That's pretty much it. Thank you.